Aloha from Kilipohe, Kikani Loha. Well, it's time to get back on the LS MT125 transmission, and we're going to continue the gearbox assembly at this point. And I promise by the end of this video the gearbox will be completely assembled and it'll be time to start on the hydrostatic transmission. So, Mid PTO driven gear, which if I recall correctly, oh, it goes right into there. This is the Mid PTO driven gear, and it has a snap ring groove in the middle. This snap ring goes into. Yep. This gear rides on two bearings. Put too much in there now, I'll go down. Two bearings, as I said. I believe they're going to be 6205s. And again, these guys have seals on them, which we do not need. I want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing here, but I don't. You shouldn't be doing anything over the top of this gear case, because if I drop something in there, it's a big hole for sure. Okay, cleaned out and seals removed. This is the Mid PTO shaft. You can tell this is weathered, so it sits outside of the case here, meshes with that gear. And there's a bearing here, and there must be a bearing in the front of it too. Yeah, there's two bearings on either side of this. And then there's a seal in the case here. And one of these is going to go in that hole. So it's that one, of course. Trying to sneak it in underneath that gear. Okay, so that goes in there. Some nuts on it. Next there's this guy, which is a 6205, and inside was a 6204. This one might have to get pressed on. There we go. And that is the Mid PTO box, empty of parts. And here's all our parts going into the trash bin. Recycling, not trash. Hydrostatic transmission motor shaft. And here's the HST motor shaft. And if I recall correctly, it goes in this way. Is that correct? Yeah, because this part goes into the hydrostatic transmission, and the motor portion of the transmission mounts on that shaft. Yeah, this is the one I had to reorder the bearing for, because it's It's a 6004 bearing, but the one I originally bought didn't have the seals on it, and this needs to have a seal in the front because it has to seal fluid from coming from the hydrostatic transmission. So this is another one of those instances where we're going to take off one of these seals. And that will be open to the inside of the transmission, and then the other side will be, yeah, that goes on there like that. And then there's a circlip that goes here. Keeps that bearing, and then a large gear and a small gear, and then another smaller bearing, 6203, which goes into this hole here. And I think I bought one with seals on it. Yeah, I did. Yeah, that one goes in there. So once again, taking the seals off. I couldn't always find bearings configured the way I needed them, at least on Amazon. I'm sure I could have gone to McGuire bearing or whatever, but you know, this bearing is probably $15 on Amazon. If I go to local McGuire bearing in Hilo, it's probably $45. And we're getting pretty much close right now. I think we only have 2 or 3 more shafts left to go. And there. Yeah, I can't square it. Now, this has a shim on the front of this bearing, and that is the HST Motor Shaft box complete. Excellent. Next is the Range Select and Range Select fork. This box has a lot of stuff in it. These are the bearings that came out: 6001, 6201, 6304, and 6304 slash something. Here's the lever. Now, before I do anything, I think what I'll do is I'll put the Range Select lever in. So I don't want another is this even going to go? Kind of feels like there's a burr. Yeah, it's very hokey. So, I mean, it can only really go in with all of this stuff in there like that. It can only go in, you know, with it up. and it can only turn around right in that little notch. So you put it in with the range select fork pointing up, spin it around between the PTO clutch and the case, and then pop it home. This is a very funky shaft. It has the pinion gear on it that interfaces with the final drive, and it's suspended by two large bearings that go in this open not race, but open housing here, and one small bearing that goes on the front of this. And the bearing that goes on the front of this is it's a very special bearing. It's like a helical bearing or something like that. So the first thing we want to do is put the two 6203 bearings on this. Yeah, this is this bearing I was talking about. See how it's got a wobbly, what do they call that? Helical? No. It's got a very special name. Right. This guy, I believe the two bearings are 6304 and a 6304 NR. 6304 NR. I don't know what NR stands for, but what it means is it's got this snap ring around it. Ooh, man, it gets hot in here with the window door closed. I remember which bearing goes where. I dropped my book, so I lost my place. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so the snap ring, it goes on second. The first one goes on the 6304. Goes on first. I did kind of find this interesting that this bearing journal has splines on it. Okay, that's on. Pretty tight. And then the one with the snap ring, and the snap ring goes towards the front. Excellent. So the two bearings and the snap ring, and through those bearings. There we go. Hopefully I can get the rest of the stuff on, because the range select gears go on the front of that, as well as a bearing with the range select fork, which we have gotten disassembled here. Okay, so this is the range select gear, and there's a front one too. Oh, I see, that's going to go like that. So that's the front range select gear. That goes on front, and then this guy is going to go in the back. So let's put the range select bar back together here. You can remember. Okay, yeah. So spring, lube, ball, shaft. But we're going to have to put that in the vise. I didn't get it filmed, but I got it back together. Yeah, I've got that in the middle detent. Just had to tap it with a brass hammer to get it to go in the right spot. Okay, I had to pull out the HST Motor Shaft to get all of this stuff in here. So, but this is there's a gear on there, and this circlip goes in the bottom there. A little bit of witness marks on which side go where, so it looks like it went in that way. Try not to drop it into the case. Heavy duty circlip, man. Okay. Looks like it's in there. I really like turning this and watching the differential turn. Okay, the select gear and select lever. And I was feeling like the way this goes in is get that gear started on that shaft and then rotate the select lever out as far as you can, and then that allows you to get the select lever in the right spot, and then you can drop this guy into its receiving spot inside there. Fortunately, we can't really move this right now because of the detent. It would pop around, but so I'm going to put the HST motor shaft back on. Yeah, and it's in neutral right now. So the motor shaft is spinning, but the drive is not running. So if I were to select a gear, either high range or low range, or the other way around, whatever, we would turn. So what is left? Yeah, that guy goes on there. And I'm pretty sure it goes on with the writing out because it was stuck in the case before. Tap. Now when I first saw that bearing, I thought it was chooched. Yeah, okay, that's what we have left. We have the idle shaft here. And, well, I mean, these two bearing journals are different sizes. I've got two bearings left. One's going to go on there and one's going to go in that hole. So let's see. Yeah, that guy goes on there. Does that go in that hole? It does. Problem is, both of these guys go in there. This is a 6201. What the heck. Okay. Well, all of it's got to come apart again. I mean, I'm going by the reverse assembly instructions for the transmission. So you'd think the thing would go together this way. Okay, well, it looks like I can get that lever in without. I don't know if I can get that lever in there with this thing in there. That bearing does not go in there, dude. That means it's this bearing. It's got to go in like this. Yes, but I don't think there's any chance of me being able to get this select lever back in there. How the heck I got it out of there first? Anyway, there we go. We got to put these two O-rings on this select shaft. And get the select shaft on there. Tap that roll pin in. Good. Resist the urge to shift the gears because it'll pop that shaft out if you try. Okay, that is the range select, which is a lot. I mean, that's a lot of stuff in there. We got idle gear, we got the range select gear, we got the range select fork, shaft, and lever. Got all of that stuff in there, so that's pretty big. Okay, last box is the four-wheel drive shaft. Very, very close. Shim, bearings, new bearings, shaft. Yeah, this one sticks out the front of the transmission and goes to the four-wheel drive, the front drive shaft. This is the four-wheel drive select lever, which is going to be impossible to get in there with all that stuff in there. God dang it. And then the detent ball is held in by this bolt into the hydrostatic pump case. Hopefully somewhere in there, yeah, there's the detent ball. Okay. Well, that's the select. Oh, the select lever goes in there, either like that or like that. That's the four-wheel drive shaft complete, it says. Got a bearing on the front. A couple of circlips holding that gear on, and a bearing in the back. That seems to be what we have here. There That rear bearing is rather small. I believe this is the front bearing. Where does that gear ride? Oh, look at this. Yeah. 8 4-wheel drive shaft. Excellent. Okay. That's a much better diagram. Okay, so that circlip goes behind that bearing. Does that go on? Okay, yeah, it'll go on from the front. Okay. Excellent. Oh, that's small. That's better. All the way down there. Yeah. And the bearing will go on from the front. Excellent. Okay. The 4-wheel drive engagement lever goes, or gear goes on with the little thing in the back. And then a circlip, which is a smaller diameter circlip. There we go. Yep. Click, 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 click. And then the smaller of the two bearings goes in the back. And that goes in the case, which you can't get that in. But that's fine. We're going to have to take everything out again anyway to get this lever in. Okay, so this lever goes in right there. Which means I probably got to pull this lever out. Which means I might have to pull this shaft out, which means I'm probably going to have to pull this shaft out. And by out, I just mean move. Hopefully I can do that with that. Okay, that moves out. That can come out and move out of the way a little bit. That give me enough room? No. No, it doesn't. Does that give me enough room? No, it doesn't. Yeah, this shaft has to come out completely. You know, after you do this a few times, you kind of get the feel for how stuff moves around with respect to each other, and you don't have to try to jam stuff together the way it was in there before. Just a matter of getting the gear teeth meshed up and the bearing in the right hole. Oh no, this has got to be moved out of the way. I need to do that, get that in there. Can I get that mesh? Spoke too soon. I was doing it. Turns out I'm not doing it. Et voila! I hope that was on video, because man, that is just a bunch of crap. Oh, you know, and of course, that was all lame anyway, because this bearing has got to go in underneath that gear, and I got to pull all of that apart again just to get that bearing in. I don't know if I can even get that shaft in there like that, but we'll see. So this comes up a little bit, up just a little bit. Yep. That goes out of the way. This bearing goes in here without dropping it down into the case. Yep. And that comes back in. And the four-wheel drive lever has to be out of the way. That goes in there. This lifts up. Get the shift lever in there, and then the fork goes in. It says here in fine print, that goes together just like that. And I believe that is it, except for, well, no, we got to put the these two O-rings on that shaft. Shaft in. Whoa, don't drop anything down the hole. So that only remains the detent ball, spring, and bolt that hold the detent ball in. But that is it. That is the gear case assembly complete. And we're ready to clean this thing off and glue it up. Hopefully I didn't get too much junk in there.
Okay, well, I did a couple of practice assemblies, and what I found was I wasn't able to get the neutral lever and the hydrostatic transmission control lever into the case with the shafts in place. So I pulled the cover off, and we're going to pick it up here where I am going to install these two levers.
Neutral adjust lever, it basically puts a little bit of pressure on one side or the other of the hydrostatic pump to keep the transmission in neutral. And then this lever is the hydrostatic transmission actuation lever. So I couldn't get this lever in because it's got to go in from the inside, and the shaft here was in the way. And I couldn't get this lever in because the four-wheel drive shaft was in the way. The cool thing, at least for a little bit, is that the manual does have a section on reassembly of the hydrostatic transmission. Yeah, so there are two ball bearings and a seal in this, which I don't think I got that. I didn't get this O-ring. I'm reusing it. So these have to go in from the outside here. I squirted a little bit of hydraulic oil in it, but I think just a touch of grease is probably not a bad idea. Okay, that is all ready. And this collar goes in there. Okay, so there's the two bearings and the collar. Next is the shaft. This did take a little bit of damage when that bearing failed in there. Okay, and I believe there are two circlips, one that go on the shaft. It says, the manual says there are two. One that goes on the shaft and then one that goes on the housing. Gotta put the big one in first. Okay, sorry I couldn't show you how to do that, but you can see that circlip is holding that bearing in there now. Yeah. So the big issue is if you push this shaft out all the way, it'll push those bearings out some, and you don't want to do that because otherwise then you can't get the circlip on. We just have this one put on the shaft. And it is a delicate little flower, so do not over squeeze this thing. Slide it down in there and then guide it on with a pick or a screwdriver or something. I have stretched it out one time already. So I'll try to show some of this mechanism. I believe the way this works, you know, I mean, this is the lever that the swash plate works on. This guy is a cam, and you can see it just adjusts that just a little bit. I'm not going to put the seal in because I'm pretty sure I can put that on from the outside, and I do not want to get that seal stuck in there and then have to take this shaft out again, because you have to drill holes in it, and it was kind of a thing to get out. You can see the holes I had to drill to get it out. So with the neutral lever and the HST control lever installed, I'm going to go ahead and take another swipe at putting this thing on. It's taken me a couple hours to get to this point. I may have to take it apart again, there's no doubt, but you never know until you try.
Okay, so just a couple of little pre-assembly reminders here. First of all, My transmission came with 3 shims in the outer case, and I put those in to the outer case with a little bit of grease just to hold them in place so they didn't fall down when I put the outer case on. Secondly, I do have the transmission in gear now. I think it's in low gear or high gear. It doesn't really matter which gear, but you need it in a gear so that when you put the outer case on, you can spin the assembly and help the bearings to align with the outer case.
This bearing, because it's floppy, um, it tended to kink a little bit in the housing when I was putting the housing down. So the key to that was to spin this shaft.
So by spinning the hydrostatic motor shaft while you're putting the cover on, you help align those bearings. That's what I'm trying to get at here.
Put this little guy in here. It cannot be forgotten. I'm just going to wipe that off with a dry paper towel. Try not to get too much grease. Just going to wipe the outside there. I don't want to get this brake cleaner on the O-ring, but I do want that clean. I'm going to start the gooping process at the top, since that is the least important thing to seal, and since this stuff cures, if the top part gets a little bit dry, then that'll be okay. I don't know, something tells me I could, put it together dry and then do a hydrostatic pump practice assembly. But I'm just kind of worried about doing that too. The hydrostatic pump and motor are highly precise machined parts. Highly machined, precise parts. And I really don't want to take them out of their packaging until it's time to put them in. I believe this is the overflow from the hydrostatic pump relief valve. There just isn't much gasket surface around these registration pins. Okay, everybody push down. Check one more time. These guys are vertical. Didn't really get good coverage here. Okay, it's all the way down. You do something enough times, you get a little bit better at it, I guess, is how it goes. Yeah, look at this. So here's the, it's loose, but this is a stud, and then that's the control shaft right there. Look how much room they give you to put that nut on. In fact, there's not even enough room to put a wrench on it, or a socket. You have to use a wrench. Okay. Just snug. Showing just a little bit of gooberness on the outside. I think I might just put a wrench on it and take it down just a little bit more. Okay, there's just one more bolt, and that goes through the hydrostatic transmission into the case. So I think I'll just put that with the hydrostatic transmission bolts. And there was something I was going to do. Oh, you know what? Yeah, that's what made me think of why these guys weren't going to go together. I was thinking I would put these levers in while I was waiting for this stuff to cure. I guess I could put on these, you know, there's a fitting that goes here, there's a relief valve that goes in one of these, and just a plug in the other one. You can put those guys on. I know one thing I can do, and that is put the detent, the four-wheel drive. So there's a ball and a spring, ball, and a spring, and a cap that goes right here. Now we should have a detent for four-wheel drive. Oh, gosh. Okay, excellent. One other thing I can do on this while I'm waiting for that RTV to cure a little bit is I can put these plugs in. This is just a regular old plug. The one above it is a poppet relief valve. New O-rings on these guys. I marked this one, but of course, oh wait, no, there's the paint. There's the paint mark right there. Okay, so this one actually went in there. I looked for some kind of a witness mark, I couldn't find anything. Yeah, a little bit of green paint there. I think they're at exactly the same part number, but that's where it went. Might as well put it in there. I was freaking out because this little part here, it was sitting on the end of the HST lever shaft, and I was like, that doesn't look like that goes there. I thought a little square thing went there, and yeah, sure enough, there's a little square thing that goes on there. I'm not going to put that in right away because it's super likely it'll fall out. Okay, well, I had to double check. It looks like it goes in this way. Yeah, that makes more sense. The spring goes almost all the way in. Always record everything you do. It's a good piece of advice. Because if you don't, you have no way to go back and reference it when you take something apart. You think it's some innocuous little thing, and oh, I'll just take this plug out, blah blah blah, whatever. And in the end, you can't put it back together with a lot of confidence because one, you don't remember how it went apart, and two, you don't have a video of it, and three, the manual isn't very good on it. Of course, I say that, and then here's the page from the manual showing exactly how they call that the charge relief valve. That's exactly how it goes in. So, okay, I reckon it's been long enough. I'm going to go ahead and button this thing down. 34 foot-pounds is where we're at. Where we're going. I'm just going to have to fake it on this one here because I don't have a 90-degree torque wrench. That one, so that means probably this is the last one, or maybe it's already been done. 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 Okay. Mark them up. Oh, this one. Missed one completely. Okay, let's stand it up and see if we got them all. Here's weighty. Oh yeah. Paint, 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 paint. Paint on the bottom. Paint. Paint. Paint, paint. Okay. I got all the pins on. Man, that is a weighty lever. What's next? That's more really just to keep stuff from getting in there than anything else. Okay, well there's the LS MT125 transmission gearbox section completely assembled and buttoned up with the hydrostatic transmission control lever and idle control lever installed in the hydrostatic transmission box. From here on, we're going to be assembling the hydrostatic transmission itself, including the pump and motor. I'd like to say that goes well, but unfortunately that's not the case. The motor that I got from LS to install into the hydrostatic transmission has rust on 3 of the pistons. 4 of the pistons were stuck in the bores when I got it, and the back plate has rust on it as well. LS is sending a replacement, but considering it took almost 3 months to get parts from them before, I don't anticipate this arriving anytime soon. So it could be a long time before we button this thing up. But hopefully you enjoy this video. I really appreciate everybody who watches. It's a lot of effort to put these videos together, and I know eventually somebody's going to get some use out of them, so that's why I do it. All right, aloha.